Please welcome Fred. Thank you.
Is er misschien wat water? Is there some water?
I will get you some.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see, because I do not see my first slide. Hey. People behind the... Okay. Can I see my first slide, please? There they are. Yeah. So, thank you for having me here on this second ATypI in Antwerp that I witnessed or being part of. The first one, I have to start quickly with the first one. The first ATypI, I actually do not know whether it was really the first one, but the previous one held in Antwerp, that was in 1993. I was there as well. Didn't give a talk though. Instead, I was harassing people by giving them a leaflet, which used for the first time a typeface called Renard, and made a big promise that next year a book was going to be published. Of course, that never happened, at least not next year. The next year, what happened was that I gave my third or fourth punch-cutting demonstration in the ATypI, on the ATypI conference in San Francisco. So I had to carry all this gear in a kind of small wooden cradle, which I covered with a wooden lid screwed on top. And all kinds of stuff with it, hammers, screwdrivers, metal, two little vices, lots of files, the nasty thin ones, the needle files, and a lot of very sharp, dangerous gravers. And that was simply my hand luggage. That was still possible then. So here I am, young, slender Freddy, giving a demo. What I did was, I had this handycam. Back then, handycam were still rather big, but I had a handycam, put that above my punch, with attached simply a lens, extra lens to it, and then I was able to transfer that image to the screen you see there, and then you could actually see what I was doing in a small surface of, say, 4 by 4 millimeters. Yeah, what can I say about that? I think more guts than brains. Now, 25 years later, here in Antwerp, I do give a lecture. I hope still that there's guts, but I hope also there's a bit of brains. I mean, if it's not now, then it's probably never. Antwerp in the 16th century was a booming town. It was, well, around the middle of the 16th century. It was an attractive place for entrepreneurs. One of those from Paris, from France, Christophe Plantin, actually he was a bookbinder, went off to Antwerp to seek his fortune. The man was a real businessman. He was successful in what he undertook and quickly could allow himself to put a lot of profit into investments. And slowly the whole place, ended up in something what we now know as the Plantin Matrices Museum, which was founded in 1874 or 1876. After 2 years of negotiation with the Matrices, the city of Antwerp managed to buy the museum, which was the print workshop actually, which was neglected. It was neglected by the family who started to also explore an enterprise in other business, and they simply forgot where they came from, and they never invested in their original core business anymore and left it as it is. And that's why they basically forgot about it until it started to lose money. And then they turned it right away in a printing museum. And it's the first printing museum within Western culture in the world. The nice thing about Place, of course, is that it houses a lot of things: equipment, materials, typographic equipment, punches, big and small. We have even got wooden punches, which is something else than wooden type, by the way. Matrices and strikes, and of course, last but not least, very important, all the correspondence, or a lot of the correspondence, and business correspondence of those days, who describe what was necessary in order to, in the end, produce the end product, which was usually books. So you can follow the whole process, and that was a way makes this place so unique. It might be that people who have seen already lectures from me, that they see a lot of the same images. This is simply necessary because everybody, also newcomers, should have the chance to enjoy or to get as much from these lectures as possible. It's very important to realize that the first director, Max Roses, at the beginning of the 20th century, end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, and there his follow-up people like historians, academics, people like, in this case, Mike Parker, or Hendrik Verliet here, the man in the black suit, Leon Wood, Harry Carter, assisted sometimes by his son Matthew. They are responsible for opening up the collection. They are responsible actually for making a kind of wayfinding throughout all this material, throughout decades. Without their efforts in the 50s, we never could do what we do today. At least I could not. One of the things, as a result, is this publication counterpunch, of course. You know. In English, 2 editions, I guess. The left one is the first one. It has all kinds of knowledgeable little things. And in the end, it's translated in a number of languages. The French version, there is even a Japanese version, which was first, and there is a Portuguese version. Right, okay. For the ones who are not that familiar with the topic, I quickly show some photographs done with Guy, who cannot be present here, unfortunately. Guy Hutsbout, from the Museumplan Matrices. We see here a punch, so to say, struck into a matrix. Then we got a copy of that punch in that piece of metal. We can put that matrix, that piece of copper, into a mold, close the mold, be sure that the spring pushes the matrix to the bottom of the mold, and then we can put in or pour in. Actually, what a caster does is not pouring, but okay, here we pour in some liquid type metal, and then we take out the matrix. And we see that we are left with a castling, or a piece of type, which is here on your left. So we have a punch, a matrix, a piece of type, and that what we see in the book, in all printed books, is that piece of type has been covered with some ink, and then it leaves a mark on a piece of paper. So that what you in the end see is a copy of a copy of a copy. In order to do that very well, you have to really control the process, because it's only for the first time in the digital age, so to say, that we can make 100% true copies. Before that, it was always a bit difficult. The difference between a strike and a matrix is simply a strike is a piece of copper, unjustified, in which the punch has been hit, and the matrix has been treated in such a way that it fits the mold in the right way. In this talk, I'm going to throw those two things in one heap. I just refer to them as matrices. I'm a practitioner myself. It's nice to do, and it's also, it helps me to understand what it is actually I'm looking at. I like to do all kinds of things. Here, I showed this one for the first time 2 years ago in Berlin. These are smoke proofs of a punch-in creation, so to say. Along with it is some timeline. And what most people always assume that it takes very long, that is not necessarily true. It doesn't take with me, at least. So you can actually make punches rather quick. It doesn't have to take a day per se. We can see, for instance, that many punch cutters were perfectly able to cut 3, even 4 punches a day. Here, another one. There's a little bit of a break there, 12:25 and then 14 hours. Hardly anything happened in that step. I think I was having lunch. Another thing very important is casting. I never thought casting was that important, but I started to pick it up because of him here, the man in the middle, Justin House, who said you have to cast, Fred, because then you can make cross-references between casting and cutting. I'm glad in the end that he managed to persuade me, because indeed you can make many cross-references. One, for example, is I suspect that early small type, really small type, something like this, it's usually generously justified. So the space between the letters is rather generous, rather big. I thought at first they did that on purpose because it makes the whole thing more readable, more legible. Not necessarily so, because if you cast and you start to experiment, hand casting that is, then you will find out that there is a border. You can only cast that big, because at a certain moment the mold doesn't fit in your hand anymore. And you can only cast that small, because at a certain moment the critical mass of the type metal in the type mold, or in the casting mold, is too little to keep itself liquid, even if the mold is very hot and it doesn't reach the letter in the mold of in the matrix anymore. That means that border is about 0.5 millimeter. So if the box width of your letter is less than 0.5 millimeter, a hand caster starts to moan and to groan. That's to say, the width of that little castling in that little matrix. So that width, if that becomes smaller than 0.5 millimeter, it becomes very difficult to cast. You don't want to do it. You have a lot of failures. I'm not saying it's impossible to cast something by hand, which is, say, 0.4 millimeters. It's just not something you want to do in daily life. So that means that your single-stroke letter must fit in a 0.5 box width. Yeah? All your I's and J's and L's, the period, the colons, they have to have, basically they cannot be smaller as having that width. If you go smaller, you will increase, they have a width which is too big. And if you do that, you have to do the rest accordingly. So I think that small founds, which looks rather generously spaced, is because of casting reasons. What I'm basically saying is that the smallest letter in the 16th century, the border or the bottleneck was not the punch cutter. He could easily cut smaller than 6 point. It's not the printer. He could print nearly anything. It would be, filled in anyhow. It's the caster. The caster simply cannot cast thinner than 0.5 millimeter. So you cannot make these kinds of considerations without doing it, actually. You do not think about them behind your computer, browsing all over the world. You come not across this. Also, this information is nowhere documented, really. So let's have a look at punches. Punches in the museum, they look like this. That means they are well protected. It's a big, shiny layer of varnish to prevent them from rusting, but you cannot see what's happening underneath that varnish. So then it's better to look at the matching matrix, if that's available, or strike, like this. And then you have a clearer view of what happens just below the image of the punch. That's what we're going to do a bit. And if you look at an image like this, the letter is furthest back. So it doesn't come to you, it's at the back. So this is a Hebrew character, and it's been engraved. That's to say, the punch cutter in this case used a engraving tool just to dig out the counter of this Hebrew character. He did not really do his best. It could be a lot better. But what you see, and I think there should be a pointer here somewhere. Ah, here. What you see is that the border between, this is the pointer, right? The border between image and letter, or image and counter, is sometimes a bit vague and very unclear, like here. Yeah. So if this is the surface of the image of the letter, then the counter is like that. You don't want to have that, at least the printer doesn't want, because that will pick up ink very easily and will smudge and will deliver an unclear and unsharp character. This one, by Lebet, is much better. It has a deeper counter, and you see that the border between image and counter, on the non-printing part, so to say, is really sharp. So basically, there are 3 ways to do this. You can digging out counters. You can use a counterpunch, which delivers at least smooth walls. And you can mix the both techniques together within one counter or within one punch. This is an example of the mixing technique. We see here clearly at the bottom this round leftover of the round counterpunch, and the cutter said, okay, now I have to adapt the rest. I take away that what I, in order to knead my shape in the right way. Here's another sample, the 8 from the same set. 2 clear bottoms, and then the sides are dug out, or maybe even the other way around. So that's a mix. That's the most, for you, the most left. Here we clearly see 2 use of the same counterpunch, a way where the punch cutter used indeed a counterpunch, and it has very smooth sides, very deep, very steep, and everything is rather well defined. This is very small. This is this is about 6 point, a bit smaller actually. Now, to think that a matrix or a strike represents exactly the image of a punch, that's not really entirely true. If you hit a punch into a piece of copper or press, then what happens is not that. What happens is that the sides bulge out and it pulls down the material. But even this is a lie, because if your counter is really narrow and deep, the copper will not be able to reach it. If your counter, like what we saw with the Hebrew, is rather generous, wide, and deep, and the copper can reach the bottom, it will still bulge away in the corners. So basically, come on, what happens here and there is the same thing. And only if your counter is really shallow and rather big, the copper will really penetrate everything. So you have to take that into account a bit. Looking at matrices, we can explain, and strikes, we can explain a lot. Here we see, again, a Hebrew character. What happened is that the punch cutter later, or maybe even the justifier, scooped out this part and placed an extra punch here. So this is an adaptation. The punch was cut, and the matrix is being changed afterwards. So this dot is not on the original punch. Same with this. Here we clearly see, oops, a misser. And there it's been put. Here, this one is also interesting. Wrong, 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 more or less right. What does this mean? Either they had a much better magnification than we think of, and or they had ways to position two things rather precisely. I think it's the latter. What also happens, we should realize that for a punch cutter, a punch is not really the goal. The real goal is having strikes, copies of the punch, of its image, because, that's a way to cash in. You can sell those, and that's the easiest way to cash in on the time spent on cutting a set of punches. We have here a sample of SSI ligature, and we see something weird going on. We have here a kind of river-like thing, which repeats itself here. We have here a strange square. There, this angle is there as well. Look at the flag of the S. Look at that little indent there, which comes back here. So what happened here is that the punch cutter, in this case, Guyot, cut first this, made enough strikes of it, then he made the punch soft again, cut away the entire first S, and made out of the SSI an SI ligature. So if you look for this punch, well, it doesn't exist anymore. Accents, yeah, 2 times the same A with different accents. This is done with a very very important technique called so-called stepped or shoulder punch. You file away a part and you put in a smaller accent punch. This is the diagram, reality. It's all rather fine, as you can see. If we are interested in punch cut complexity and management, then we better take a look at Greek. No 16th century without Greek. And Greek is a complicated script to cut. It requires a lot of ligatures and accents. For instance, accents, alpha accents, between those 2 leaves up there is just alpha accents. Another thing to look at, what matrices might show us, is, of course, widths. Here, 10 accented letters. If I divide them into stacks of 5, then the stacks will be of equal height, no matter how I hustle them around. The question now is, of course, how equal is equal? I've shown these pictures for the first time, Thessaloniki, 2007. I've been showing them ever since when people talk or ask me to talk about these kind of things. How precise, how equal is equal? Well, I've been looking at the accent in these Greek sets, which is a whole lot of accents, believe me. And I came to the conclusion that all the accents do not differ compared to their parent more than 0.15 of a millimeter. That means bigger or smaller than the parent. So if you look at this, we have a parent iota, which is different than the accented iotas. Yeah? The parent is 3.7. The most narrow one in the set is 3.55. The most wide one is 3.8. That is a difference of 0.25 of a millimeter. That's still within the margin, so this would qualify still as a very good job. Anything that falls out of this border, this margin, is actually sloppy work, provided these are matrices justified for fixed registers. Here, something else, an alpha, accented alpha, and they're both equal. So that alpha is being made, of this alpha, accented alpha, is being made with a shoulder punch. So the punch of the original alpha was turned into a shoulder punch. Else you cannot do this. If we have another accented alpha with an accent below the baseline, then we see that parent and accented letter changes. Yeah? That means that in this case, he didn't use the shoulder parent alpha. If we look at 2 times the accented alpha with a comma accent below the baseline, and the accents up top differ, so from here we can conclude that the alpha with an accent below the baseline is one shoulder punch. Yeah? So looking at matrices really can explain how you really can detect a lot how things were done within a certain set. Well, let's have a look here. We are again an alpha and another alpha. Are they different? All types of designers say right away yes. The designers among us say, yeah, I was wondering why I like the other one more than the right one, so to say, because they are different. Okay, good. They are indeed different, the 2 alphas. And the question is, where's the difference? Now, that's a bit more difficult to answer. A trick I got from my assistant, Roberto Arista, is we can make them transparent in Photoshop, give them a different color, and then put them over each other. And then we can clearly see where the difference is. Well, so that what's extreme red is different, and that what is extreme purple or bluish is also different. Everybody understands this, right? So if we do that with more accents, like this epsilon, then here it stays the same. Here, let's get a third one. It stays also the same. We see that the parent really doesn't change. How many of these are there actually? Well, in this set, there are 16 of them. Well, let's put them all 16 on top of each other. Then we end up with this. I don't use colors now because that's too confusing, just gray values. But we see clearly that there is in the parent character, the epsilon itself, no real deviation. That means that the punch was surviving this 16 times being hit into a piece of copper. There's also no sign of wear. I don't see it. This is simply a proof that in this case, at least mid-16th century punches could be cut, could be hit quite a lot without, you know, things wearing out. Actually, what I forgot to say is that we have 16 of those. So we are sure that nothing happened with the actual punch, the parent punch, 16 times. But that's not true. I can easily say we can double or triple the number 16. Why? Well, if you start to make a set of strikes, and especially Greek, you just don't do that. You don't say, oh, I'm out of stock. You know what? Come back in 2 hours. That's not the case. Making a set of Greek strikes will keep you busy for the next 2-3 weeks for sure. So you have to tie up the accent upon the punch and then hit, make a strike. Get it out, untie it, put another accent, tie it again, hit it. That's not what you do. If you have tied one accent to the punch, you hit it once, you hit it twice, you hit it 3 times, because you make a supply. Yeah? It's like making fries. You don't make fries from one potato. So it's very likely that what we are looking at, this punch, is being not hit 16 times, maybe 3 times 16, or very probably. Greek is also interesting because, you know, it's, like I said, it has those ligatures. Oh, so we have here a delta with an epsilon. Here we have a delta with another letter, rho, and an omega. And I can't help to think that something is going on here. If I take the liberty to put everything in the same angle, because they are dancing a bit, that's a matter of the justifier. If I put another one on top, and another one, and another one, what I see is that the delta and its tail and the counters are remaining pretty much the same. There's some noise going on sometimes, but not that much. That means that this was probably made with help of rather abstract counterpunches, something like that. Well, the counterpunch is cut, readable. If you hit it, it's the other way around, but the punch cutter easily has all the space here to do whatever he wants, and even can put here another counterpunch, which would, in principle, distort this image, this part, but that doesn't matter, that has to go anyway. Yeah? So Greek is, for many reasons, punch cut technical reasons, interesting to look at. If I do this, looking at matrices, I'm missing something. I'm missing the information of the shank of the punch, because the punch is not there. But, okay, the advantage of looking at matrices is that we have far more matrices and strikes than punches. So basically, I'm enlarging my collection. Anyway, if you look at, come across punches which have a torpedo-like shape, like this one, they are probably very, very old. They are usually rather short, and they are a torpedo shape because they were meant to be held in the hand. Yeah? And if you held something in the hand and hit it, especially the material back then, which is rather soft, it might bend. You don't want to do that. I don't want that to happen. So to prevent punch from bending, where will it bend if you hit upon it? Of course, in the middle. And it's exactly there where they make it fatter. Yeah? Basically, a shape like this Yeah, you can put a lot of pressure on it. What will happen? I don't know, but it will not bend. Yeah? That's why it's torpedo-like shaped. It also means that they didn't use any extra equipment to make possible strikes. Yeah? So the punch cutter who uses this model is basically not 1, 2, 3 interested in making a huge number of strikes which he can sell. It means that it's probably a punch cutter who is attached to a certain house, printing and publishing house. And that's why if you see punches like this, old, give us a call. This model, you find also sometimes, this is just an amateur. He likes to solve his problem of the lid, of the shoulder, in a rather excessive way. This model is common, say, mid-16th century, till actually the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. After the Industrial Revolution, punch cutters use other stuff. Well, we come back to that. This model is only being used for very big type, big letters, big punches, big faces. So this is actually basically the reverse of that. And the punch cutter can really easily touch the outside here, because here there's nothing. So the 16th century, mid-16th century model till, say, the French Revolution looks like this. It's all often has a cross-section like that. And this is something really square with long, controlled, flat shoulders. That's typical, 19th century and later stuff. So here we see one of the modern punches and 2 historical punches. There's a big difference. So historical punches are usually easy to recognize. Let's look more into matrices. Let's be a bit of a voyeur. An E, probably made with counterpunches, really square. And here, a sudden stop, something happens here. Yeah, the punch cutter just left this whole part. Yeah, it's a bit rough cutting. He didn't care. Because this punch has been made by our pragmatist and propagandist, Pierre Rotin. Pierre Rotin is in a way a kind of inverted punch cutter. Look at that. Here the counter is quite neat, and the outline, holy, it's a blah. Oh, this, very extremely rough. It's also very small. This 6 point, around 6 point, bit 5.4 officially. But okay, this is a very small G. This is a slightly bigger G, still small, but you see it remains rather rough. Then here a P, the same pattern. The counter is smooth. It's an enclosed counter, so from a punch cut technical point of view, this is the most difficult part to do. The rest, the outline, is easy to do because you have all the space to manipulate it. But no, he makes everything very smooth, takes great care of his counters, and the outside, well, more or less, that's good enough. Here you can exactly see what I mean by an inverted punch cutter. Again, the small, little, well taken care of counter and closed counter with the help of a counter punch. Here, a big correction. This also a bit difficult to reach. This is the bottom of the counter punch. Very smooth, very secure, very nice. And then the rest, finished, next one. The most extreme sample is this one. I call it the tap dancing P. Look at that. Maybe he had a hangover, I don't know. But he didn't mind. He used it. It was okay. Another one, this This one, this P, where is my hair? This one, that's Grandjean. It's also very small, but slightly bigger than that one. And you see Grandjean solves this problem differently. He builds another kind of counterpunches by 2 parts, yeah? So that he doesn't have to fumble around in this bit. Yeah? So it's possible to do it differently, but no, Hautain just, oh no, let it roll. So the tap dancing P. No, that doesn't really connect, what we think of the great masters. Well, Hautain, like I said, is a very pragmatic guy. He knew that it didn't matter, because this is the specimen. This is a piece of text printed, and the P's in this text are cast from that matrix. So if we start to look and enlarge it, there's no P here. Here we have it. Yeah, and here, we're up that. And there. Where is it? There, the first line is a P. Yeah. So, everything is dancing and rough here. And the fact that this P has a rather swinging stem, so to say, doesn't matter at all. Here we see something back of that thing, see? But only because we know it, yeah? So Hautain was very well aware of the fact that a certain finesse is needed. Proportions are very important, but smooth outlines, no. I'm not going to waste my time on that. No, really, I have no order. The man was so busy. And it continues, because the biggest set of matrices from Grandjean's cut, struck with punches from Hautain's hand, they keep on showing this kind of rough finishing. Yeah? Of course, the letter image gets bigger, so it hurts less, so to say. Yeah? But, come back. But here we clearly see this rough cutting. He doesn't take care, he doesn't bother to make it nice and smooth. It's what he actually does. It's nearly a kind of half-bitting. The ones who still used to work with bitmap fonts know exactly what I mean. There's a bit of too much black here. Scratch, 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 scratch. And there's simply less black. Right, documents. It's a contract. Contract between whom? The CP Pantin here, and here we have our Pied Piper of them all, Robert Grandjean. Actually, this is not, I think, his signature. This is probably, or that, or both of two, is his signature. That's just the name. I guess so. But anyway, 16th century signature are as illegible as ours. It's a contract about the order of 200 punches. Next to the contract, there is a list of deliveries. A list of deliveries mounting up till, here, the 200, here at the bottom. And we see here that from 30th of May to the 3rd of June, that's, I think, 4 days, he delivers 8 punches. And then from 3 to 7, that's all again 4 days, 6 punches. From 7 to 9, only 2 days, he comes up suddenly with 7 punches. 9 to 15, that's 6 days, only 4 punches. It goes on like this till 200. The contract is made up in 1565, February the 3rd, and until the June 29th of the same year, so 146 days, Grandjean delivers 200 punches. In average, that's 3 punches in 2 days. Pwah. No problem. I'm not laying awake from this, not at all. This is the casting register of the, of the matrices of which were used to, which the punches were made. And now I have to take back something, because the alphabet I was talking about is Greek. Greek again, with all these complicated little closed counters, difficult, nasty yet beautiful ligatures. I mean, really. Yeah, stuff like that. This. And that in 200 days. Okay. I apologize. I take back what I said. How did he do that? Because this is indeed a lot of work. I mean, look at that. I'm talking about stuff like this. The Greek set contains 119 ligatures. Most of them are rather complex. Not all of them, but most of them are. How would you ever do something like this? How can you manage to cut 200 Greek punches in just 144 days? How should I look at this? This is one punch, but it's 4 letters. And the standard says a punch per day. So this is 1 day, or a punch per day, 1 letter per day. This is 4 days. So normal standards break down on this. And of course, you might say, Fred, think he had help. Yes, of course he had help. I know that. But what does that help do? It's not like, you do there the first counter. So you start working top down. I'm here at the last counter and I take a file and I have to file something. Oops, did I push my file into your eye? It's, of course, impossible to work for 2 people to work on the same punch at the same time. It cannot be done. Impossible. So he had help, that's fair to assume, who did a lot of footwork for him. So, but what would that be? It would be that the master would do things, and he say to his assistant, face this down a bit. There's too much breams on the face. I cannot work now. Here, I made a groove here, made it deeper, and used this file. I prepared a counterpunch. You can harden it and find a good blank to sink it. Yeah? This punch on the right side of the neck, the talud, the shoulder, is far too unsteep. Make it much steeper. That I can imagine. But then if you do that, make the shoulder a bit more steeper. Yeah? So what do the master do? Wait until his assistant come back? No, that doesn't save time. So conclusion is that they would work on different punches simultaneously. There's no other way. If we now look at Greek, again, Greek starts to be a little bit of my hobby horse. That's the big Greek from Grandjean. And yeah, and here I have to stop soon. Here we have the smaller Greek of Hontin. Yeah, cut by Hontin. Okay. We have a difficult ligature. We have another difficult ligature. They have the first 3 letters in common. And if I put them all on top of each other, it's suspiciously close. Really suspiciously close. You see, it's there at the top of the P-like character that he makes some deviations. Yeah? Let's have a look at Grandjean. Grandjean, the same ligature, it's much bigger. First, same 3 letters. Another ligature with the same first 3 letters. Let's put them on top of each other. And here we are. Although the Greek of Grandjean is much bigger, it has a lot more deviation. It doesn't fit as nicely as the Hontin thing. Well, that's settled then. It's clear. Hontin is the better punch cutter of them 2. No, I don't think you can say that. Because, why not? Because both products are handmade. Both products were, for the days they were made for, completely accepted. They were top-notch quality. Yeah? So they were successful in their own days. There is basically, from a quality point of view, no difference. And also we need all this 20th century gear in order to see something which we normally wouldn't see. Yeah? So you cannot say that cutter A, in this case, is better than cutter B. What we can say is that apparently the way of working of Houdin matches much more what we would do today. That's something completely different. Yeah? I have to stop? Really? Okay. I'm sorry. How long have I been talking?
They want us out of the building by 8.
How late is it?
It's 7:54.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
They're asking us to leave the building by 8 o'clock. That's why we have to cut this short. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. I have some more interesting slides to show, but we stop here. Okay, good. This goes on and on and on. There are plenty of opportunities to see it again and more. Invite me, I will talk about it. Good. Yeah. Thank you. No problem. I didn't realize I just had an hour.
Thank you.